Good morning and welcome to the Pioneer Pantry. My name is Marin and today we're going to be making some egg bites. It's a copycat recipe from Starbucks and I just modify it to fit whatever I have on hand. Today I have cottage cheese. I had a little bit of pre-shredded cheese still in the bag, and then we will finish grating up some additional just medium cheddar. Then I have my eggs. I have some pre-cooked bacon that I had in the freezer that I just need to chop up, and obviously salt and pepper, and I think that's all we need. So let's get started. First thing, I will link the recipe that I based this off of in the description below. The first thing is to crack all of the eggs, and because I have 3 cups of cottage cheese, I am tripling this recipe just because then I can do them all and freeze any that are left over. Which there will be plenty left over because my husband goes to work pretty early in the mornings, and so it's just my son and I for breakfast most of the time. So I'm just going to crack. The recipe calls for 5 eggs in one recipe, but because I bought medium-sized eggs instead of large this time, I'm going to do 6 eggs per recipe. So since we're tripling that, that will be 18 eggs. Five. And I like to make big batches of these because it just makes it easy to freeze them. These actually freeze really well. And then I can just pull out enough for a couple of days. And then you just pop them in the microwave for 15-20 seconds, and they microwave really well, and it makes an easy, quick breakfast. Sometimes I put veggies in them. I actually have I might have some frozen spinach in the fridge that I might decide to add to these. We'll have to see. Frozen spinach is in the freezer. I might have some frozen spinach in the freezer. We'll see if I do. And so it just gives a really complete breakfast for not a lot of work, because it doesn't take any longer to make a triple batch than it does to make one batch, and then going forward all I have to do is microwave it. And if you hear my dogs barking in the background, please ignore them. One dog in particular is very needy, and she can hear me in here talking, and she probably thinks I'm talking to a person that's here, and so she's like, not only is Mom not letting me spend time with her, but she's not letting me meet these new people. Well, she'll just have to live with it for now. Okay. And I like to, especially when I'm prepping on the stove, I like to lay out these napkins that we were gifted just because somebody was getting rid of them, because then it's not as hard to clean up the stove. And this is the stove that came with the house, and it's a glass top stove, and it's really hard to clean, so I never get it all the way clean, and I found that it's just easier if I lay something out on top of it, unless I'm cooking on it, and then it's going to be hot, and so don't lay anything out. So I'm going to get the oven preheating, and then I forgot to grab my whisk, so I'm going to go grab that, and we'll be right back. Got the whisk. And the oven is preheating to 350 degrees. So I just scramble these eggs up. And once all the yolks are broken, that's when I like to add my seasonings. So just add in, I should probably be measuring this since I'm not very good at it, but there's going to be bacon in it, so it'll probably taste good. And our salt shaker, for some reason the grains of pepper, not salt, the grains of pepper are just, some of them are just a little bit too big for the holes. And so when I need to put in like a whole teaspoon or more of pepper in something, I usually just take the lid off. So just mix that up. Okay, see if we can get that off. And the rest of this we don't want to really whisk, so I will just set this whisk aside. And we'll use my spatula going forward. Okay, so now that those eggs are done, I'm going to get the eggs back in the fridge just so that they aren't heating up on the stove, and then we'll be right back to chop up some bacon, finish grating this cheese, and put it all together. Okay, I'm gonna grate this cheese up first since it's just right here. And I just cut a chunk off of my 2-pound brick, and I'm going to grate all of it, and then if we don't need all of it, because we need about 3 cups of cheese, then I will put the rest in the fridge and we'll use it for quesadillas or tacos, or I think we're having mac and cheese for dinner tonight, so I'll probably use it for that. If I'd been thinking about having mac and cheese for dinner tonight, I would have just pulled out my food processor, well, my Bosch that I have a food processor blade for, and I would have just grated up a whole brick of cheese, because, oh well, lessons learned. And once I get down to a little piece like this, I always just eat it. Let's see. And you can grate this cheese smaller if you want to. This cheese melts really well, so I'm not worried about having fairly large chunks of it or fairly large strands, or if it clumps up or anything. But if you want it to be more cohesive, you would probably want to grate it a little finer. And this little grater is, I've had it for years, and it's probably the most amazing grater that I have ever used. Because it comes with a lid for this thing, and so if you have leftovers, you can just store them right in the grater. It's got a little silicone on the bottom that keeps it still while you are grating the cheese, and it comes with 2 different sizes of graters. It's just really awesome. We're just going to put all of this in. It's probably going to be a little more than 3 cups, but who doesn't love cheese? It's closer to 4 cups. Okay, set that aside. And then chop up our bacon. I'm not going to do all of this bacon. The recipe calls for 2 pieces of bacon per recipe, and so I am going to, well, we'll see, let's see, that's 6 pieces, yeah, we're going to stick with that, because I've got enough in here to do a double batch of this recipe, or to add it, I could add it to our mac and cheese tonight. So I'm going to put this back in the freezer. Okay, that's back in the freezer, and we're just going to get this chopped up. I'm using this giant knife because we're getting new lower cabinets put in part of our kitchen, and so everything's kind of a mess, and most of our dishes, and in fact, everything that's not food basically is currently in our dining room. And so I just grabbed the first knife that I found. And it was this giant, I usually use it for cutting watermelon. So it's really funny. Another benefit of having these napkins is I know they're clean, so I can just set things on them without having to worry about if I cleaned it well enough beforehand. I try to get these into like somewhat small chunks. I'm not worried about them all being the same size. I don't want them to be too big because our son is still at an age where choking is a risk, and so we want them to be small enough that he won't choke on them. But you know, as long as they're, and they will get pretty soft in the egg mixture and as they bake. So that's also a mitigating factor in that. But I don't worry about trying to like fully mince the bacon. Our oven's preheated. Since I'm using a rather small cutting board today, once again, first thing that came to hand, I'm just going to put that in before I do the other half of our bacon. So I like to make bacon in the oven because it's just less mess. I don't have to worry as much about potentially burning it. I can do a whole bunch at once, and so I usually do just a full package, a pound of bacon at a time in the oven. And if I know I'm going to be meal prepping with something that includes bacon, I'll do even up to 2 pounds. And then I take it out, put it on either cloths or paper towels to cool, and then stick it, whatever we don't eat right away, in the freezer. Or if I know we're going to have bacon for breakfast again later that week, I'll leave some of it in the fridge, but I don't like to leave it in the fridge for too long after it's cooked, because I always have to look up the guidelines on how long can you leave different things in your fridge. Some things I just go with, well, it smells fine and it doesn't have any mold on it, like cheese. It smells fine, doesn't have any mold on it. But with meat especially, I try to be extra careful and not leave it in the fridge too long. Okay. I think that's probably good. Let's double check this side since this knife is a weird shape. I missed a couple at the bottom there. Okay, let me just get this into our mixture. And then we're going to add the cheese. Oops. I hope I got a big enough bowl out. I wasn't thinking about the fact that I was tripling this batch when I picked my bowl. I just grabbed the first bowl that I could see. Yeah, I think we'll be okay. And then, like I said, I based the size of my batch on how much cottage cheese I had. So we're just going to dump this whole thing into this bowl. And the recipe does say in the notes that if you want a smoother egg bite and you don't want to see chunks of cottage cheese, you can put the cottage cheese and the eggs in a blender and just blend them up before you add the bacon and the cheese, the shredded cheese. And honestly, you could probably put all of it except the bacon in the blender, but I didn't want to dirty more than one bowl, so we're doing it this way, and honestly we don't mind any chunks of cottage cheese or shredded cheese. Okay, I think I am going to pull out, well, if I have it, I'm not 100% sure, there's still some left, but I'm going to check and see if we have that just frozen chopped spinach in our freezer. And I'm
Sorry about that abrupt cutoff. My phone ran out of storage space. We didn't end up having any frozen spinach in the freezer, but we did have this partial bag of frozen cauliflower rice that we just didn't really enjoy as a rice substitute. I think it will be great to add some veggies to these egg bites. I just broke up the chunks as well as I could and then added it to the bowl and mixed it in. Once this was well mixed up, I grabbed a measuring cup and started filling my silicone cupcake tins. I tried to fill them about 3/4 of the way full since they do puff up while they bake.
So this recipe says that it makes 6 muffins, 6 egg bites. So I thought, oh great, I'm tripling the recipe, that'll give me 18. I can fit 2 pans on here, because these silicone muffin tins are really wobbly and I don't feel comfortable just putting them in the oven by themselves, so I put them on a baking sheet. But I filled 2 and I still have at least half my mixture left. So we're gonna have to do this in stages. I do have 1 extra sheet. It came in a pack of 3. And then I do have some just cups, just individual silicone cups. So I will probably, no, it'll be too hard to fit in the fridge. So I'm gonna put this in the oven, bake it. I'll stick this back in the fridge. And then when this comes out, I'll pull this out, mix it back up, refill the muffin cupcake liners tins, and we'll do it again until we're done. So when this batch comes out, I will update you and show you what they look like, how easy they are, or not easy because I didn't spray this because it was silicone. So how well they come out, and then a little bit later I'll show you how I package them up for freezing. We'll see you then. Okay, so these are done, I think, so I'm going to pull them out of the oven and I'll show you what they look like. So I'm going to let those cool for just a little bit before I try to pop them out, and then we'll do another batch. And I will come back and see you when they're all done, all cooled, and ready to be packaged up for the freezer. And we're back. It's just later the same afternoon. The first batch came out, I cooled, I put it in a Ziploc bag, stuck it in the fridge. Did the second batch, it's now fully cooled. And I will set aside some in this Ziploc bag to use throughout the next few days, but the rest we are going to package up. And I usually use just saran wrap or cling wrap. And I'm going to do them, I think, in batches of 6, just so you get a better sense. This is what they look like. They get pretty puffy in the oven, but then they do sink quite a bit. And I don't know if maybe I'm just not cooking them long enough. And they're supposed to stay puffy, so I should cook them longer. But I mean, we don't mind having them like this. So this is just how I do it. So I usually wrap them up, and I just wrap just a little bit. I try to keep them a little bit separated, just so that they don't stick together when you're trying to take them apart later. And if I'm doing 6 at a time, then I will do 1 row, and then I'll do another row, and just kind of roll this on top of it. And the 6 at a time comes from the fact that my son often will eat 3 of these as part of his breakfast. And so 6 is a nice multiple of 3. And then I just kind of squish the ends. And then I will try sometimes to rotate the middle. I don't think I have enough room if I do 3 all the way across. So I'm just going to push those together. And then I will do one more just small layer as cling wrap, just to try and keep as much air out as possible and prevent freezer burn for as long as possible. We will go through these fairly quickly within the next probably 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. But just since these are such a moist food, I try to do that double wrapping. Eventually, I'd like to try flash freezing these, which is, I think, if I'm saying this correctly, it's where you just put them in the freezer. I would just put them in the freezer in these silicone baking cups and let them freeze solid, and then take them out and package them up like the next day or later that day. And I wonder if that would work better, if that would prevent freezer burn more on this and other similar foods. But I'm not really sure, and we don't have room in our inside freezer to do that because it's pretty small. And I'm usually not willing to trek out to the garage in the middle of a project to try to flash freeze something. So maybe in the future I will try that. Let me know in the comments if you flash freeze foods that you prep and store in the freezer, and how that goes for you. Or if you prefer to just package them and freeze them as is. So yeah, these are the egg bites that I like to make for quick breakfasts. And this is how I package them up. The recipe that I followed, I tripled the recipe. And I will, once again, I'll link that down in the description. So I tripled the recipe, and for me, I got exactly 48 egg bites. And I will say again that these silicone muffin tins, which I can also link, are smaller than most muffin tins that I've seen. So just be aware of that. If you do make this recipe, you probably won't get 48 normal sized egg bites. Yeah, so that's it. I saved up 6 here for the next couple of days. I've got all the rest packaged up in this reusable silicone Ziploc bag, and these will go out in the freezer. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you would like to see more of our videos, I'll put a playlist right here. And if you're interested in following along with us as we do more cooking and eating and other food-related projects, please subscribe. And thank you for being here with me on the Palma Pioneer Pantry.